This episode of The Rookie Hunter is sponsored by North Arm Knives. North Arm Knives are handcrafted and sold directly through a father and son team right here in British Columbia. Choose from a selection of outdoor knives, kitchen knives, and the brand new folding knife from northarmknives.com. They ship internationally and guarantee all their work. Callie and I use their products and give them our stamp of approval. Go to northarmknives.com. Hey guys, welcome to episode 56 of Rookie Hunter. Today on the show, we're very excited to have Gray Thornton from the Wild Sheep Foundation. He's the president and CEO there. We're also welcoming back Chris Barker from the Wild Sheep Society of BC. This is his third time on the show, and we recorded this at the Wild Sheep Society BC convention in Kamloops. This was just a couple weeks back. It's a bit of a hotel theme on this episode. I'm currently in Cody, Wyoming. What I'm doing here is a secret for now, but my first impressions of this place are pretty good. I got here in the dark, so I haven't seen too much of what's going on, but I've noticed a number of statues featuring pronghorn and elk around the city so far, and they're pretty impressive. There's also a grizzly display as soon as you get off the airplane. So wildlife and wildlife conservation are obviously a big part of what happens here, and we're actually right on the border of Yellowstone National Park. While I'm at it, I might as well mention that my beer of choice for this evening is the Big Sky IPA, which is brewed by Big Sky Brewing Co. out of Missoula, Montana. Rather than promoting things Rookie Hunter on this episode, I am going to send you guys to the Wild Sheep Foundation website, which is wildsheepfoundation.org. And I want you guys to become members. Kelly and I are both members, and we're also members of the Less Than One Club. So becoming a member is cheaper than you might think. For a year, it's only $45, and to join the Less Than One Club is just $25. The Less Than One membership is open only to those aspiring sheep hunters who have not yet taken a North American or international wild sheep ram, which obviously Kelly and I both qualify for. It's just a great way to get more money on the ground for wild sheep. So if sheep are something that you want to hunt, or if you just like seeing them on the landscape, Wild Sheep Foundation is definitely the way to go. So again, that's wildsheepfoundation.org. Sign up and become a member today. But that's all I'm going to say. Sit back, relax, crack a cold beer, and enjoy episode 56 with Gray Thornton and Chris Barker. Cool. Awesome. Great. Chris, welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us in your hotel room.
You got it.
Yeah.
Good to be here in Kamloops.
Yeah. Give us a bit of a breakdown on what's going on up here.
Yeah, well, good to have you guys. Obviously, you guys were at Sheep Show, so that was a new experience. And
yeah, it was.
Well, Sheep Society of BC show, so welcome up here and on the road. Mm-hmm. Fun-filled day today. We got a couple of presentations. We've got a event going on right now called the Wind Down event for ladies. So
nice.
Jessica Young flew out from Midnight Sun Outfitting, so she's helping host with our executive director and our secretary. So they're hosting. So that's a women in hunting program.
Yes.
And then we've got Bill Hanlon. He's doing an Iceman presentation. He's the fellow that found the Iceman in the Tatsunshini.
Okay. Oh, cool.
And Mr. Epp, Darren Epp, out of the Less Than One Club, is doing a presentation on his hunt at La Pomosa.
Oh, right on.
And
Awesome.
his 191?
Yeah, 190 and change. Get kicked out of the Less Than One Club with a 190 desert bighorn sheep. That's pretty epic.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, good for him. He's just so mild mannered too. I was trying to get him up and going last night at the backpack race, and I made a mistake. I said it was 189 and change, and I go over there, kind of to high five him, and he's just, Gray, it was actually 190 and change. Okay, Darren. But what's an inch amongst friends?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, we met him down at the sheep show in Reno.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Well, he's from Alberta.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Just a fabulous wildlife photographer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's of our chapter affiliates. This is a big weekend. There are 7 events going on throughout North America. We've got Alberta chapter going on, Wild Sheep Society of BC, Washington Wild Sheep Foundation, Northern Nevada SCI, Montana chapter Wild Sheep Foundation, Iowa FNAWS, Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep, et cetera, et cetera. It's a huge weekend for the wild sheep family, which is pretty cool. You know, a lot of people getting engaged and a lot of money being raised for this iconic resource.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll come back to some of that stuff a bit more. When did this start on Thursday then, and this is the final day?
Yeah, so basically on Thursday it's kind of a closed thing. We have our board meeting, but we also have a sheep separation working group meeting, which is kind of closed doors. So it really doesn't get going until Friday. About Friday lunchtime, we start with a bunch of presentations, and then we go into our fun night. And that fun night's involved, that evolved out of a social thing, right? Everybody show up, nothing to do. We see some presentations. We'd all end up in the bar down there, and we'd spend money and drink, and we're going, well, we're losing money here. We could make money because everybody's going to stand around and talk.
Right.
Let's give them some booze, some food, and let's get some raffles going. And that's how our fun night started. And then we had a backpack race last year, and we had a relay backpack race this year, sponsored by Sitka and Stone Glacier. And I think we had 10 men's teams and 3 ladies teams competing last night.
How did it go?
It was pretty good. There was a couple of wrecks. It was one of our new directors. I don't think I'll say his name, but
say it because everyone's seen my crush on that.
The Cheap Joe.
Josh Hamilton. I think his new nickname is what was it? Two Sheep.
Ram Crusher. Or
Ram Crasher.
Ram
nice.
Crusher.
Yeah, he hit two of the sheep that were on display down the hallway. Just as he come to the finish line, his backpack hooked him. He took down 2 sheep, went down. And all he hears is bang. And Dennis Keto, our photographer, he's standing right there, and he's like click, 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 as he's going down. So there should be some great shots of the backpack race. But thanks to our sponsors, right? I mean, stepping up, Sitka's huge, and first place was I think $3,000 worth of gear for the winning team.
Oh, wow.
3 people, right?
Wow.
So
That's
huge.
awesome.
And then running in today, we had our Life Members Breakfast. Gray's our Life member, so somebody else that believes in what we're doing up here from the U.S. I think it was 80 people in the room this morning for our Life Members Breakfast, largest ever.
Wow.
Colin Peters won an outad hunt.
That's awesome.
We gave an outad hunt away, and Gray did a little speech, and then we'd roll into that, and then we just had our AGM, got a new board elected. We got 6 new board members this year. Really excited about that.
Are you stepping off?
I backed out to let some of these new guys get on the board. I'll stay on as a director at large.
Okay.
That's probably projects chair.
Yep.
So still guiding projects specifically with what we're doing, but start to get some of the new blood in. I've been doing this for, we've discussed before, 20 plus years, right? 25
For sure,
years.
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's good to get some young folks in there.
Yeah.
Take over the
Brad
reins.
Siemens, some pretty cool stuff there. He's been engaged with wild domestic stuff. Out of the pictures. Been a Wild Sheep Foundation member before he joined the Wild Sheep Society of BC. But sees the crossover, and had a really good conversation with a domestic producer on Thursday at that sheep separation meeting that he may end up on the board there. So I mean, you can start to see these partnerships and crossovers working, and so that's that. And then a little bit of a break, get a breather, and then at 4:30 I think we open the doors to the banquet hall where it's silent auction, raffle tickets, and extract as much cash as possible in the shortest amount of time.
Sheep show, that was pretty exciting to watch. Those nights was just unbelievable, and it kind of opens up our perspective a little bit more on how that all works and why all these different types of hunters are very important throughout. Guys who are just doing it backpack style like Kelly and I wouldn't have the opportunities without guys who were spending a couple $100,000 on a tag, right? So it's pretty wild to see it all come together. And
it seems like there's a few that are funding a whole lot of opportunities, right?
Yeah, and it's a real family though.
Totally.
As you all saw, and there's obviously there's something unique about wild sheep, where they live, how difficult it is to get to them. You've got to be fit, you got to have drive, you got to have the mental, the mental drive. But There's something about this wild sheep family too, and Kelly, I think you nailed it too on yeah, there are a few, and I think there's been kind of a misnomer about the Wild Sheep Foundation. It's just a bunch of wealthy people. It isn't.
No,
I mean,
no.
it really isn't.
You have absolutely
there's just
everybody there.
there's just a few people that they have the passion, they have the financial resources, and quite frankly, they put their financial resources where their mouth is,
Yeah.
and we all benefit.
Exactly.
There's a lot of talk on allocation, and Wild Sheep Foundation just doesn't get involved in allocation issues. It's not our deal. We're all about the resource. What can we do for the wild sheep resource, and allocation things need to be dealt with on a provincial or a state level. But there's a lot of talk about those special tags, and this just 2 months ago, month and a half ago, we raised just $4 million
It's crazy.
alone
Yeah.
for state, provincial, First Nation, and tribal agencies, on those special tags. But the key is, that is not opportunity for all in some respects, because it is, if vernacular wealthy few having the opportunity. But we've done studies across North America on the significance of those tags to the provincial or state agencies or tribal agencies, and they're huge.
Right.
Like Arizona, I mean, it's 95% of the sheep conservation money comes from one tag.
Wow.
Overall, it's about 70% of the sheep conservation dollars that are available to agencies come from those special tags. Amazingly enough, 40% of all sheep conservation dollars come from Wild Sheep Foundation, which is crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
it's significant. It makes, certainly we're relevant. But what I like to point out is Kelly, just what you said is, that one wealthy person that's putting his or her dollars into that tag makes it possible for regular folks like us to have this opportunity. Whether it's in BC, with an over-counter opportunity, whether it's in Alberta with an over-the-counter opportunity, or my state of Montana. I mean, we're the only lower 48 state that has, with our unlimited areas, basically an over-the-counter opportunity to hunt bighorn sheep.
Right.
And we would not have that if it wasn't for, the guy or gal that's willing to spend $335 to, the largest we sold it for, $485,000 for the Montana tag.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But that money goes right into sheep conservation. So it's an incredible system. It's unique. But it works, and it creates that opportunity for us regular folks to get into the game.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
And being in the room kind of gives you new perspective on it, because you read it in a newspaper, and to some people it might not look good that, some guy's spending $400,000 to do this, but when you're in the room, you see these guys egging each other on to spend more and more and more, but they're doing it for the sheep.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily just to go on that hunt.
It's a guy in a polo shirt and blue jeans.
Yeah.
It's not some stuffy investment banker in some ivory tower. I mean it's just a regular guy or regular gal going, what, I've got a passion for wild sheep, and yes, I've been successful in life, and I'm going to put my money where it can do some good. We had one of our guys, it was just before Saturday night. We just had an incredible convention in Reno. And I'm about ready to get up on stage and kick off the evening, and the guy comes up to me and he goes, hey, Gray, you're going to be ready for some fireworks. I'm going, what's wrong? He goes, nothing. He goes, watch the tags tonight. It's going to be nuts. And it was. I mean, all the auction items just went nuts. And it certainly brings a smile to your face when you see that kind of money being raised for wildlife conservation, and in particular wild sheep conservation.
Yeah.
It's needed.
Yep.
100%, for sure.
Well, it's good you guys to experience that.
Yeah.
I've told you guys about it, but for you guys to make the effort to go down there and see it.
Yeah, it totally changes our
Changes
our outlook.
perspectives,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you say, I think your audience to be involved locally with a chapter and affiliate is huge, right? I mean, you guys now get it, right?
Yeah.
And sorry to say, boys, you are screwed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like what other stuffy organization has a tattoo parlor
Yeah.
totally.
in their show? I mean, we
Yeah.
had a ride for the brand tattoo parlor. We had
Did you get a tattoo?
I did,
Yeah.
man. I'm 56 years old. I got my first ink.
Nice.
And, we had 85 people we had 6 quote unquote authorized, tattoo styles. It was the Wild Sheep Foundation logo, and then we had line art of the 4, then currently the 4 world record North American wild sheep: the bighorn, the desert bighorn, the Dals, and the Stones, and then an ibex just for the Europeans if they had an inkling. But yeah, I mean that was just something to do something a little different.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was it's a little edgy.
Yeah.
And I think it also breaks down the barrier of or the perception and the false perception that's just this well, gosh, if you're going to be involved in the sheep community, you got to be some rich dude that can drop hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, it's all of us.
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure.
And it was fun.
Well, it's entertainment, right?
Yeah,
I
it's
would
all
say-
about the fun.
Yeah.
It's a show, right?
I think you have to get a tattoo this weekend.
A birthday
I
tattoo.
think there's enough pictures floating around. I don't need a
Yeah,
tattoo.
well, we had the Wild Sheep Calling World Championships on Wednesday night, and I'd met the 5-time Canadian duck calling champion, a guy named Matthew Wilson out of New Brunswick, and I met him on a goose hunt in Alberta, and the guy's just a great guy, just a phenomenal duck caller, obviously, and a dog trainer, and we started talking. There's a guy, a 4-time North America elk calling champion, a guy named Dieter Kaboth, and he goes, "Hey, we should do a wild sheep calling contest." He goes, "You know how to call wild sheep?" I go, "No, I don't think anyone does, but we could pull it off." And
Is that a thing?
It's
It's a
It is
thing?
now, yeah.
Yeah.
we did it.
We did
And we've got our own Chris Barker right here, because we had calling. You had to do kind of a feeding call. There was a kind of a greeting call, and I think there was a comeback call, and then we had the mating call that we called the ram slamming call, and British Columbia's own Chris Barker won with a few gyrations, a little skin
Commitment.
being shown, and a fabulous lip curl.
Yeah.
So you did well.
We've seen some photos.
Yeah, there will be one in the Wild Sheep magazine coming out
nice.
next month.
Nice.
Little leg slapping.
His wife is really looking forward to that.
Awesome.
She doesn't know about it.
I think we need a soundbite of that while we're here.
Yeah, maybe a video.
Yeah. Let's rewind a little bit. Before we started recording, we were talking about our backgrounds, and we all have a pretty similar background into hunting, actually. So I'm curious to hear your story and how you got into hunting.
I guess I'm a I don't know what a traditional is, but we in the hunting and conservation community, talk a lot about recruitment and retention and single parent homes and all that kind of thing is being barriers to getting involved in hunting. And I don't know if I agree with that, because I come from that exact background. My folks got divorced when I was 5. I guess if you listen to today's, conventional wisdom, I should have wound up in jail. But no, I mean, that was just reality to me. And then I got blessed with 2 sets of parents. I mean, my mom got remarried when I was 9, and my dad at 10. And like I say, I got blessed with 2 sets of parents. But funny, neither sets hunted. I do not come from a hunting family. My mom, I don't know, I was 6, 7 years old, and she was at a company picnic, and she saw some folks fishing at a little city lake in Palo Alto, California, and she said, "Geez, maybe I should get my son involved in that." So she took me to Gemco and bought me a little spinning outfit, and I started fishing. But it wasn't until I was after college that I, through a Xerox customer of mine who became my hunting mentor, taught me how to hunt. But first and foremost, which I'm so grateful for, he taught me the right way. It was all about ethics.
Right.
It was all about stewardship. It was all about giving back. It was all about conservation. It was all about doing the right thing. It wasn't just about pulling the trigger.
Right.
he's still a great friend. I'm 56 years old, and that was 30 some odd years ago. And it's just been an incredible path for me. I've hunted places through involvement in this industry, first from Safari Club International. I left the for-profit world in 1990. I worked for SCI for 7 years, and then I led Dallas Safari Club for 7 years for SCI, 11 years for Dallas Safari Club, then came to Wild Sheep Foundation in 2008. So it's been a 28-year run. That obviously has opened my eyes and has created opportunities. But those, the opportunities are those that I've looked at and stepped into and done. But, I guess what I'd say to the audience here is, you don't have to, you don't have to have a dad or an uncle or a mom or a grandfather that hunts. I mean, if it's something that interests you, give it a try. What's exciting to us in the wild sheep family is the kind of the intensity of mountain hunting. I would say that mountain hunting was the first extreme sport. I don't know if I really like using the term sport when it comes to hunting, but I mean, mountain hunting is intense. I mean, you got to train for it.
Sure.
Sheep hunting's probably 90% mental and the other physical, or maybe 80 and 20. But you've got to really put your mind to it. You got to spend time, mentally training, physically training, and that's something that young aspirational sheep hunters, I think, can get behind. It's not sitting in a pickup truck driving a road and doing the classic diesel stock. I mean, you gotta make it happen. So. My hunting has evolved. I did a lot of African hunting in the days, and then came into sheep hunting later in life. First sheep hunt was in 2000. I wasn't physically prepared, and even more importantly, I wasn't mentally prepared. And I came home without a sheep. I saw a legal ram. It was just barely legal. And I figured, if it's going to take us 45 minutes to make this thing legal, that's probably not the dull sheep to take. But it wasn't. It was 13 years later, 2013, till I took my first sheep.
Wow.
And now I've been blessed to take all four, and
Nice.
I'll be working for 2 lifetimes to pay them all off.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
It seems like you have to do that first trip to figure out what it takes mentally to go up there. Mike and I and another buddy went up this last season, and we thought, well, let's just do it. We've only been hunting for about a few years now, 3 or 4. So on the one hand, maybe it's a little soon to jump to the pinnacle of hunting, but on the other hand, it's this wasn't about just meat. It was about the adventure and just putting ourselves out there and seeing what it took. So yeah, it was a great experience. We didn't get anything, but it wouldn't change anything about that hunt.
And I think it makes you a better mule deer hunter. It makes you a better elk hunter, because you start to look at those mountains a little different. Where you go, do I really want to go on that ridge for maybe a buck, and then you go, well, of course I do.
Yeah.
And no, I don't mind going over 3, 4, 5, 6 ridges.
Yeah.
Because that's what it that's what it took to go sheep hunting, and that felt good.
Yeah.
Whether you take a sheep or not, you feel, hey, man, I did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote an article that says, I get it now, after that first hunt. And it really was an enlightening, it changed my life. It really changed my life.
Yep.
Well, it changed Kelly's life too, right?
Yeah.
Your wife.
Yeah, my wife, my wife got into it too. She took a stone sheep here in Region 6 in northern BC in 2015, and she took a goat on my stone sheep hunt, and now she took a Boone and Crockett goat on one of the hardest hunts we've ever done. It was in Kodiak Island. It was a 6 mile backpack in, but 6 miles in Kodiak is, you gain 2,500 foot elevation, you drop 3,000, you gain another 2, and you drop 1,000, you gain 3. I mean, you want to talk about a ticker tape type of a hunt. I mean, it was tough, but when you do it, and you get back out, that hamburger and beer tastes awful good.
Yeah,
Totally,
it does.
yeah.
I think everybody that goes through Fort Nelson, and they hit that Boston pizza. Because we met some folks down in Reno that said, "Yeah, you look familiar." So I don't know. Oh yeah, I saw you in the Boston pizza at Fort Nelson. Everybody just looks haggard when they get out of there.
Yeah.
It smells pretty bad, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh well, the pizza tastes good. The beer's
yeah.
cold.
Yeah,
Yeah,
jugs of beer after 8, 10, 12 days, whatever it is that you're out there.
Yeah,
It's pretty
You
great.
can get into a whole world of herd after a hunt.
Yeah.
We started to tour our stuff around Liard Hot Springs. So
Right.
if we were hunting Cassiars, we'd loop over, come down, make sure we stopped at the hot springs or going up, depending on where we were hunting. But to stopping at Liard Hot Springs and jump in the hot springs, it's just like,
Originally, we were going to go further north and hit the hot springs on the way back, but we didn't make it up
yeah.
there. I was looking forward to that.
They're
though.
spectacular.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And a bunch of booze.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Yeah.
Time for a good nap after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for some of our listeners, like Gray, you're from the Wild Sheep Foundation.
Yeah.
Chris is from the Wild Sheep Society of BC. So what's the relationship there? Is it Wild Sheep Society of BC is a partner but independent?
Yeah,
Or how does-
they're an affiliate. We have chapters, and they're pretty darn similar. A chapter of Wild Sheep Foundation maybe shares our name, but Wild Sheep Society of BC is an affiliate, completely autonomous, and some of our chapters are completely autonomous as well. But we just kind of call it all within the Wild Sheep family. It's not the Wild Sheep Foundation
Right.
family, but the Wild Sheep family, because we're all dedicated to the resource, and each group has talents, assets, and resources within their province or state that they can get things done. And so, I'm a life member of Wild Sheep Society of BC. Chris is a board of director of the Wild Sheep Foundation. So there's a tie there. Chris also is the board liaison to our professional resource advisory board. We have a panel of experts. We got three BC folks on that panel. Bill Jex, Helen Schwanche, she's the wildlife vet for BC. Bill Jex is the biologist for the province, focusing in on bighorn sheep or wild sheep, both thinhorn and bighorn.
Yeah, he does a bit of both. He is a Region 6. He's
Region
assigned
6
to Region
biologist.
6,
Yeah, I know we've got Anna Fontana down in Elk River area. So there's a real close tie and a real cross-border tie. I mean, the Wild Sheep Foundation has, we're based in Bozeman, Montana, but we have a huge Canadian membership. It's one big family.
Yeah. I think, just for the listeners, I think Kyle was quoting the fact, and I don't know whether you've looked at this, but I think Wild Sheep Foundation, was it in the last, I don't know if it's in the last year, but I think it's over $3.25 million back into BC.
Yeah.
That's in a
Yeah.
year or 2 years, Gray? Or is it over?
Well, I mean, last year alone, Wild Sheep Foundation directed over $250,000 US into British Columbia, and that's not including the minister's tag.
Right.
So you add that sold for 220 I think
Yeah.
this year. So
Yeah.
that's almost $500,000 US that we have put back into wild sheep conservation, advocacy programs, education programs, and ungulate enhancement programs in the province. So I mean, it's just a very, very close tie between the province of British Columbia and the Wild Sheep Foundation.
Yeah, which is pretty significant, especially given the fact that I think it's like $2.5 million that goes directly to the HF, the Habitat Trust Fund in BC from all the tags.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big portion.
That's a lot of money for sheep.
yeah.
Comes in. And like I say, the partnerships, what we're raising in BC, Wild Sheep Foundation has a grant and aid program. So we have the opportunity to apply through grant and aid for more funding other than the special sheep permit as well. So, but on the other hand, like our Thinhorn a Thinhorn initiative in the north, it's totally funded out of Wild Sheep Foundation in partnership with what's going on, and it's funded by one of, I think Kevin's okay if we say his name,
Yeah.
Kevin Rinke, and he's fully funded that for the last 4 years, I believe, and that's over $200,000. Grace put in that.
$50,000 a year that he puts in personally. Then we we augment. But I mean, we did a Jade Boulder Road stone sheep monitoring program. That was $100,000 project right there. $50,000 of that came from a partnership with Safari Club International Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And so there's another organization that everyone's working together. So Safari Club International Foundation, Wild Sheep Foundation, Wild Sheep Society of BC, and the Tahltan Central Government. At the Tahltan Guide and Outfitters Association, we partner with First Nations and work together to put together a pretty significant project, and quite frankly, one of the largest projects that has been done on thinhorn sheep and stone sheep in a long time. I would say we've been probably a little bit neglectful of the thinhorn resource. And put a lot of money into bighorns and disease separation and disease research. I mean, Wild Sheep Foundation spends millions of dollars on disease research to identify the challenges and the pathogens and which bug that they get from domestic sheep and goats are the most lethal. And then separation policies, which I would say that British Columbia and the Wild Sheep Society of BC in particular are really the most innovative. I mean, we learn from what Wild Sheep Society of BC does. I mean, their separation initiatives are world class and innovative. Chris is really involved and should talk about his eating the MOVI off the landscape program that we look from down south and go, hey, that's something we can learn from and get behind.
Yeah, so we've got so one of the things we did. We had a producer come to us, and he wanted to make a movie-free flock.
Right.
So Scott Mann out of Kamloops here is doing a movie 3-year program funded through Ag. So we're getting some buy-in from Ag to try and make movie-free flocks within the province. So his goal is to make as many as possible. Basically gives us a source of healthy sheep for people that want to switch down the road until government decides whether they're going to put a framework in or some kind of regulation around disease and how that would look like.
And this
Can
is
you explain-
pneumonia, right?
Yeah, this is
Yeah, explain the disease and how it's transmitted to.
So mycoplasma pneumonia it stays in the nasal cavity,
Okay.
and it's passed basically by nose-to-nose contact. So it's if it's fluid or if a sheep shedding,
Okay.
it's passed on. What it does is it goes down the throat and it flattens all the hairs in the throat.
Oh, wow.
And then allows other pathogens into the thing. So it basically goes right to the lungs. So
Gotcha.
it causes pneumonia and a bunch of pasturellas that get in there. But the root cause, which Tom Besser has led to, is the mycoplasma is the cause of it.
And domestic sheep can carry it and not die.
Okay.
It does affect their health, we're learning. But typically if they come in contact with a wild sheep, bighorn sheep, thinhorn sheep are immune, are naive to it.
Right.
Don't have the immunities that domestic sheep and goats seem to have. And the typical reaction is they tip over and die.
Wow.
They get pneumonia and die. The cilia breaks down. Other bacteria pathogens come in and cause pneumonia, and then the wild sheep tips over. So the key right now is separation. But if you could have in MOVI or MOVI-free domestic sheep, Dr. Tom Besser from Washington State University feels that it's about a 94 to 97% fix. That if that shedding doesn't occur, that in itself is a separation program.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what we did is we kind of piggybacked on what Scott was doing. He had a producer that wanted to try and make a movie-free flock.
Right.
And we basically started in the summer. He had some positive sheep, so we undertook something at Jurassic Classic where we raised some money to help offset his loss of his sheep, right? Because his sheep are registered sheep. So we raised, I think, 17 donations at $250 a pop to
Right.
help this producer get rid of his MOVI-Us. Those MOVI-Us were then slaughtered and the meat was ground up, and then that meat was then donated to the wildfire
Oh, okay.
victims of the province.
Wow.
What the Wild Sheep Society of BC did is says, okay, we're going to help with your lambs that you have. We'll buy them at market price,
Yeah.
and then we'll serve them. We'll serve that meat at our fundraiser.
Very cool.
So at our board dinner on Thursday night, we had MOVI positive lamb for our board dinner. Last night there was a taco bar down there. It was all hamburger. It was all lamb hamburger.
Okay.
It was all MOVI lamb. So Bruce Ambler is the one that came up with the phrase of eating MOVI off the landscape.
Right.
And our members tonight are going to be doing this. They're helping us eat MOVI off the landscape. So that's one way of doing it, where we can help a producer. We're helping them get through it. You know, if he's MOVI free, we've then probably going to make his business more viable. You know,
Right.
potentially he can make more money by selling those lambs.
So do they have trouble getting rid of that meat then, if they are positive?
So there
then?
is perception around it, because, and I won't say any names here, but we had a couple of board members. There was this MOVI positive lamb, and I go, yeah, and I was on the phone, and they didn't want to eat it. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, they've not been paying attention to the stuff we've been doing for the
Right.
last 10 years, right? Because there's nothing wrong with the meat. It's a airway or
Right.
a pathogen lungs, right?
Yeah.
And nostrils. It's not in the meat. It doesn't affect the meat. It's not harmful. And believe you me, that meat was fantastic.
Wow.
So the appetizers tonight, when they walk around, that they're going to be little hamburgers. It's all MOVI positive lamb. So everybody's going to be helping tonight.
Very cool. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just one little way of doing it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think I touched on before in an earlier podcast with you guys about the one guy that he had 3 sheep. We thought we were going to have to fence him in. And I said, well, did you talk to him? No. So I phoned the guy up. I said, you know, why do you have these sheep? And he goes, well, I've just got them. I got to keep the grass down. I've got responsibilities. I'm a volunteer fire chief, so I've got to keep my grass down I'm in a fire zone. I said, well, what happens if we just cut your grass for 5 years? Would you get rid of those sheep? He goes, sure. So we cut his grass. I think we're into our 3rd year right now
Nice.
of cutting his grass. But he was right in the heart of those sheep
Right.
in Kelowna. So like each producer's unique, and you've got to take the time to get to
Yeah.
know them, talk to them. They've all got little nuances in why. And most people, once they understand the disease issue, they want to do something about it.
Right.
Some of them are passionate that they won't get rid of their sheep, but they're open to do. Now we've got this option of MOVI.
Right.
Some people have switched to other animals, whether it's cows, chickens,
Yep.
whatever, hay. But some people are really passionate about their sheep, right? And you can't go in with that attitude that we're going to tell somebody what to do.
Right.
We have to go in and give them some information, let them digest it, maybe come back and revisit. So you're making an investment as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's time invested for myself or whoever's doing that coordination. And we
Yeah.
have a sheep separation coordinator in the province that does most of that work, thank goodness. And his name's Jeremy
Okay.
Ayotte. And he's done stuff with Wild Sheep Foundation. Again, you can see these links
Yeah, for sure.
where Wild Sheep Foundation's helped fund his position, and just so it's all back and forth and everybody working to the same goal, right? And what we face here in BC is the same disease stuff they face in the States. The difference in the States, I'll let Gray go into that, but it's federal land and it's grazing allotments.
Right.
Whereas in here in BC, we're working on private land.
Yeah, okay.
So you have to stick handle those issues a little different. Montana's more like BC
Okay.
than maybe Nevada, and you can go into
Yeah,
that.
Colorado's probably the biggest challenge from a public land grazing and conflict. I'd like to actually step back and again another shout out to Wild Sheep Society of BC. But tell me if I'm wrong, Chris. I mean, you've got new on your board of directors. You now have some domestic sheep producers. You've got a domestic sheep producer and llama producer that's on your board. And she gets it. She understands the disease issue, and she wants to. She's now on the board of directors of Wild Sheep Society of BC, wanting to educate her, field of influence and her friends and people within the 4-H program. You've got a Mouflon sheep producer that gets it, tests his sheep, and so again, I think Wild Sheep Society of BC is a real leader in this community of building bridges, you know, and it's not telling someone what they can and what they can't do. It's educating them, and you know, they can be passionate about domestic sheep, but also very passionate about protecting and ensuring that the pathogens from domestic sheep don't get over to wild sheep. So again, I just wanted to point that out. That's another
That's huge.
another incredible shout out to the bridge building that Wild Sheep Society of BC is doing and does.
Yeah. Thank you, Gray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice work. What other threats are there out there right now?
Predation,
Yeah.
habitat fragmentation. You look at some of the things that we've done as a wildlife conservation community. Some of it's worked very, very well. Some of it may not have worked as well. You know, we reintroduced elk into places that maybe we shouldn't have reintroduced elk.
Okay, right.
And the elk come in, and then they bring in wolves, right. And then, as you know, don't want to get into a huge argument on global warming or climate change, but the bottom line is, this planet has heated and cooled since time forever. Yeah. There's definitely climate change. You have conifer encroachment, and so those conifer can bring other ungulates up into wild sheep habitat. We have situations in Alaska and elsewhere of bison getting up into wild sheep habitat.
Oh wow.
I think it's happening in northern BC, where you've got bison actually rising up into stone sheep habitat.
Wow.
Well, and if is that competition for forage? Yes, but you can imagine a stone sheep, especially if it's critical winter habitat, and you think a stone sheep's going to be able to compete with a bison for that same piece of ground? No. So. It's really interesting. So, as the world changes and habitats change, and there's a lot of different, different challenges that we face. Chris mentioned a thin horn initiative. We have held 2 thin horn summits. The first thin horn summit was back in 2014 in Richmond, BC, and we brought together about 70. Wild Sheep Foundation brought together about 70 of the best and brightest minds of the thin horn world. NGOs, guide outfitters, resident hunters, and then the agencies and biologists to come together and, number one, take an interest in thin horn sheep, Dall sheep, and stone sheep. Number two, identify the problems, and we came up with 8 kind of critical issues that we wanted to look into. And then 3 years later, we held another Thin Horn Summit 2 in Anchorage, Alaska. We just did it this last April. And brought, again, about 70, 80 of the best and brightest together. And we looked from a provincial and a state standpoint, agency standpoint on, okay, are those still 8 issues relevant, and then what did we do on them? But one of the things we know that predation is an issue, but as Chris has pointed out, the number one issue that we focused on was disease. A lot of what we talk about on this separation issue and disease is between bighorn sheep and domestic sheep. Well, if we're going to have that problem, and we do. We have it in southern BC, we've got it in Alberta, we have it throughout the West in the United States. But what happens if you bring domestic sheep and goats into a completely naive population of stone sheep and Dall sheep? Every other thing that we talk about, whether it's predation, whether it's oil and gas exploration, whether it's climate change, whether it's conifer encroachment, whatever, man, those issues are nothing. Right. Because if we introduce a pathogen into a completely naive population of thin horn sheep, every other issue is not.
Right.
We're facing a catastrophic loss. So one of the things we did is initiate which is pretty harsh, but a no contact in the north edict. Our view was Wild Sheep Foundation and our partners are going to work to, in effect, establish a red line to say whether legislatively or and from an education standpoint, we just know, it's not worth it. Alaska is an interesting example. 25% of all thin-horn sheep in North America live in Alaska. There's 50,000, 40 to 50,000 Dall sheep in Alaska.
Wow.
That's 25% of all wild sheep in North America. And so we've been pretty hard up in Alaska on, what? There's only 1,600 domestic sheep and goats in Alaska. Well, are we willing to risk 25% of all wild sheep on 1,600 sheep and goats? No. And so we're pushing from a legislative standpoint, but also working with those the folks that own that to say, hey, those 1,600 domestic stock, is there something we can do? Can we replace them? Wild Sheep Foundation, our Alaska chapter, have pledged $500,000 and opened the checkbook and said, we've got $500,000 that we will buy you out and replace those stock with MOV-free sheep. So, those are things that came out of that Thin-Horn Summit that pretty powerful. But what we did determine is after Thin-Horn Summit 1 and Thin-Horn Summit 2 is that those same issues are there. But the awareness is now there as well, and that's exciting to see. You got Northwest Territories, Yukon, and British Columbia all working together. Alaska jumping in, and we got the 4 jurisdictions of thin-horn sheep working together to, first of all, open our eyes to, hey, there could be an issue, and then second of all, let's do something about it.
Right.
Just piggybacking on that a bit too.
Yeah.
What we've, I don't know if this is just a BC-centric thing. There may be some states that have it, but the pine beetle infestation in BC not only affected sheep, but all our species. But what it did is, when we went and logged the heck out of that stuff, we created so much more access.
Right.
So access management was one of the things on our out of our thin-horn sheep summits, but we're seeing it in our bighorn country. But that became out of the pine beetle thing, and we went in and logged it to try and prevent that. Well, we put those roads in, we didn't take them out.
Right.
So what that did is created the access, but also fragmented habitat, right? So, that's, you want to touch on grizzly bears a bit, but I mean, that was right in the Auditor General's report. Hunting is not specific, it's not a damage, it's sustainable.
Yeah.
The biggest threat to grizzly bears, loss of habitat and fragmentation.
Right.
Yeah, it all comes back to habitat, it seems.
Yeah, and it's with all wildlife, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
whether it's, if we fix grizzly bears, we fix everything, right? If we fix predation from wolves, and it's a careful conversation around that one that, well, you're talking about killing wolves, and it's like, oh, you're bad, you want to kill them all. I go, no, we just want to manage everything equally.
Right.
There's 2 ways this works in my mind. Is either you manage all your predators, your ungulates as one species together as a unit, or you remove man from the equation.
Right. Then what happens?
And then what happens? But then do people think about that?
Yeah.
Are you going to give up your house because you're living in that habitat?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. But I would like to put that on the people, and that comes back into, you're righteous in Vancouver saying that, well, we don't want you to hunt bears, but you're living in grizzly bear habitat.
Yeah.
So if you're so righteous about it, are you willing to put something on the table for it? And that, maybe I shouldn't be talking about grizzly bears, but that has an effect on deer. I mean, you saw the stuff in Kelowna, right? The deer.
Example, we're getting further and further into their wintering grounds, and now they're just walking all over the streets. And
the guy was starting a petition. We want to cull deer up in Upper Mission, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, where are you living?
The biggest
Do you think
deer I
that's
see
the
are
real
in
problem?
my front yard.
Do you think the predation's pushed them down?
Yeah.
And you've been to their habitat, right? If fix the habitat, you won't have an urban deer problem, right? So,
But it seems like that might be another risk on the sheep front too, is the public, kind of that public opinion with the grizzly bears, and then like what animals next.
Yeah.
and you start going down that road. But
Well, it's a slippery slope.
yeah, and it's apparent that that these organizations and hunters, and we should all be fighting on the same team. We all want the same thing.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be alienating one group, because if the sheep run out, then the hunters can't do what they love. So
Yeah.
We touched on it at our board meeting, right? We brought it up. Do we need to educate the non-hunting public, right?
Yeah, and that's the key. We argue and gripe and moan amongst each other, and then we start talking about anti-hunters and this and that. Well, is an anti-hunter going to change my view?
Mm-hmm.
No. Do I really think I'm going to change his or her view? No.
yeah,
But I think I would argue that if you look at the and even maybe even the anti-hunting community, but certainly the non-hunting community. If we focus on the 80 to 90% that we can agree on,
Yeah.
and quit arguing over the 10 to 20% we disagree on.
Totally. Yeah.
Think of the good things we can do. We all want wildlife in wild places. We want clean air. We want clean water. We want wild fish in that water. We want good food source. We want food security.
Yeah.
And those are things I think we can all agree on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if we focus on that, think of the good we can do instead of bitching and moaning and griping amongst each other. Whether it's within our community or outside of our community. So I'm bullish. I'm actually positive. We've done some things at our headquarters in Bozeman. We sponsored a couple summers ago a thing called Green Drinks, and it's primarily the environmental community that likes to go around to different places, and free beer is provided and a couple of speakers, and we hosted it at our headquarters. And we had people from PETA that came.
Oh, wow.
And we asked the question. I gave a talk on what Wild Sheep Foundation does, and I gave the talk on, we're outside in Bozeman, Montana. I'm looking at the Bridgers. I'm looking at Spanish Peaks. We've got the Gallatin River right next to us, the Yellowstone behind us. Mm-hmm. And I said just that why don't we focus on the 80 to 90% that we can agree on, and not the 10 to 20 that we cannot. And then a wildlife photographer asked the crowd, how many of you hunt? And a third of the people in that crowd hunted. So, what was incredible is Wild Sheep Foundation, a hunter-based conservation organization, was hosting an event for the environmental community that 2/3 of the people that were attending were non-hunters. Mm-hmm. And we all were talking about the same thing: public lands, clean water, clean air, wild places, and focusing on that resource. And so again, I'm bullish. I think if we open our minds a little bit, we quit being entrenched in our own little areas and throwing bombs in the middle.
Yeah.
If we can join together, whether you're a sheep hunter, whether you're a mule deer hunter, whether you're an elk hunter, whether you're a moose hunter, whether you're a subsistence hunter, whether you're a non-hunter. We all know that we're sharing this planet. We're sharing a shared shared space that let's work together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
That's something we just keep talking about, and we've talked about it with you and Adam about getting an event put together where people can gather around wild food and drink and talk about all those issues. And it doesn't matter if you hunt or if you don't or whatever, right? I think it's just finding the opportunity to get like-minded people together from all different backgrounds and come up with a plan.
I'm actually working on something.
Are you? Good.
Yeah.
Well, we should talk, because we talked about it with Jesse Zeman from BC Wildlife Federation as well. Everybody's on the same page. I think it's just a matter of organizing everybody to pull it together, and it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think it keeps coming up that we hope that our podcast is kind of a bridge for the non-hunting community to get into it, kind of like how we got into it, but at the same time we feel like we're talking to the converted.
Yeah.
So we got to talk to
The
unconverted, right?
Yeah.
Shane Mahoney
I was just gonna
says a few things
lead
that
into the same
just totally hit you. And, he's just, great conservationist, philosopher from Newfoundland. Unbelievable orator. Mm-hmm. And, we've all heard him and love him.
Yeah.
but you know, he's got these little tidbits every once in a while that he throws out. Once, you know, I was having a beer with him, and you know, he was at my home in Cody, Wyoming at the time, and we were grilling some steaks, and he says, "Hey, Gray," he says, "You know, you ever notice how men just, you know, will go around a grill and, you know, watch meat burn?" And he goes, "Have you ever seen men or women stand around an oven and watch a turkey bake?" You know, it just doesn't happen. You know,
Yeah.
so that was one of his tidbits. Well, one of these things that Shane has done, and he has instituted a program called the Wild Harvest Initiative, and Wild Sheep Foundation has pledged $100,000 a year for the next 4 years to that initiative. Is he is cataloging the sustainable wild game, fish, and fowl that's consumed in North America and the tonnage, you know, and cataloging that, and then also we'll, you know, kind of interpret what would you do in a commercial farming or production, you know, with the inherent chemicals and you know, impact and you know, climate impact to replace that with commercial farming. But again, one of his little tidbits is he talks about the sharing nature of the, you know, the hunting and angling community. And he says, you know, I mean, you go out and you take a moose, or you take a deer, or you know, you take, you know, you catch some salmon. What do you typically do? You know, you share that with your neighbors. And he goes, do you ever go to the supermarket and buy a roast and then walk over to your neighbor and hand it to him? No, you don't.
Yeah.
But you know, you know, our community, you know, we're prideful of that harvest, and we're sharing the harvest. And you know, does that go back to our most early days? Yeah, I think it does. I think it's just innate, you know, in the you know, as a hunter and as an angler, is you know, you share in that harvest, you share in that bounty, and that's something that I think, you know, can bridge, you know, kind of bridge a gap. And as Chris is talking about doing you know, kind of a wild harvest dinner and bringing that non-hunting community in to eat organic, sustainably harvested fish, fowl, and game. I think that's a powerful bridge.
Yeah.
I think the storytelling is important too, because to share that meat with your neighbors and eat around a table, you're probably going to have a story that goes along with it. But if you go to the grocery store, we all know that story. It's not exciting.
Yeah. You know, I came, I saw, and I bought a pig.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's fine. I think we talked about this before too, is when you're sharing those stories.
Yeah.
And I kind of notice this too a lot now, is that when somebody's telling a story, it's usually not about the harvest or the kill.
No.
It's what happened on that trip, what they saw, what happened, something funny happened, right? You know, you fall off your horse, you fell in the creek, or whatever it was. It's that memory component of, you know, camaraderie and that whole outdoor experience. And I think we don't really relate the message past the kill component. People see the kill because of the picture.
Yeah.
They don't associate, because we've harvested something, that whole trip.
Huge story behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you guys experienced it by this in your northern trip this year. Yeah, you didn't harvest anything, but man, did you guys learn a lot.
Oh yeah. We had an amazing time too. Yeah. That's an excellent segue, because we've almost blasted through an hour. We like to end with a hunting story. I should have gave you a heads up. So it's on you to share one of your favorite hunting stories with us to close this off.
Chris shared a few.
Yeah, we got some good
interesting
ones.
Yeah. You know, so I'll share. You know, I like the blink approach. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And you know, I've been blessed of late with some pretty great sheep hunts, but I'm not going to talk about a sheep hunt. I'm going to talk about an elk hunt that I didn't get an elk. And it was I was shoot in my 20s, hunting Colorado public land with my hunting mentor, Darrell Amble, and you know, I'm a regular guy and with a regular income, and you know, often more month than money, and we would plan all year long for that elk hunt. And you know, I mean, I'd say half the deal was just the planning. And then the other half was the drive out from California to Colorado, and just the stories we'd tell and the camaraderie of that. And then the other bit was the 5 days that we'd set up my wall tent, and we'd cut wood, and we'd lay in some wood, and we'd scout, and then there was the elk season. And by the time the elk season got around, I think 75 to 80% of the real story had already happened. And Daryl's a big guy, and he and I would hunt together sometimes, and then hunt separately the other. But we were going up this one ridge, and we would typically hike up before light in the dark, and we had gotten up on this ridge the day before and didn't see anything, and then Daryl said, well, I'm going to go another place. Why don't you go back up on that ridge? So I go back up on that ridge. Well, I'm hiking a little faster than we did the morning before, but I'd left at the same time. So I'm about ready to top out on this ridge, and I heard some sticks breaking and the like. Well, it's dark, but I could just see enough, and I'd busted into a herd of elk. And I must have, who knows how many. I could just see kind of shadows going before me. And, I had 50 to 75 to 100, I don't know, elk. I had the wind in my face. They didn't know I was here. They just had heard something, and they literally, busted out and then just slowly were walking by me. And this went on for, it seemed to me forever. I don't know, back then it was 5 minutes, 6 minutes. And here I had an encounter with a herd of elk from 5 meters away that, went over a span of 5 to 6 minutes. And I could smell them, I could hear them, I could hear the little cows and little whistles, and of course, in my fantasy, I figured there must have been this monstrous 6-point bull elk in there, but I didn't see another elk that trip, and I went home, drove home after a fabulous experience. Daryl didn't get an elk, I didn't get an elk, but there was a hunting experience that I have told that story over and over and over again. As Adam Janke would say, it's beyond the kill. I didn't take anything, but I had an experience that most anyone that doesn't hunt will never have in their life.
Right.
And that's really, I think, the essence of hunting. It's why we're out there. So it was the friendship, it was the planning, it was the execution of the hunt, and man, did I have a hunt. Just didn't have a kill. It didn't matter.
I think that sums it up
great.
pretty damn good. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Before we call it quits here, anything you guys want to add?
Just appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, likewise.
And, again, a huge, we're here in Kamloops at the Wild Sheep Society of BC's 25th anniversary. And from the Wild Sheep Foundation, just a hearty shout out to the Wild Sheep Society of BC, their members, and all of our friends in British Columbia.
Thanks, Gray. Yeah, again, 25 years is like kind of a blink.
Yeah.
There's a few more gray hairs, and like I said, it's my birthday today, so it kind of rings a little bit. Fortunately, I did a lot of hunting when I was younger, and we never really touch on it. But the conservation stuff and the hours that we put in as volunteers, it impacts on what you have for opportunities to hunt. I know I've talked to you guys about this before, but I think I hunted 3 days last year.
Right.
I don't know how many hours I've got into sheep conservation work over the last year. I don't even want to think about over the last 20, 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, the people that are doing this, we're all volunteers. We don't get paid for it. We're doing it because we're passionate about it. And those hours that are there are just, it's huge. If you had to pay this job, I was trying to figure out if Gray would hire me somehow, but I haven't come up with a solution for him to make it. I haven't come up with a return on investment yet. But if I ever figure it out, it'll be the first phone call, because like I said, our sheep community, we're so passionate, we're so friendly, and you guys are, welcome to the sheep community, because you guys are in now, and once you're starting.
Yeah,
I think
you got the sickness.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you got
And
the sickness.
once you make that harvest, it's going to change your life
Yeah,
again. But I'm glad you guys made it. Thanks for coming up. Always appreciate
likewise.
the time, and appreciate the time to talk to your members, and hopefully you guys get to wander around, check out the convention, check out the heads, meet some people, and
Yeah, well, take
Well-
a quick spin before we head out.
yeah,
Yeah.
welcome to another sheep family.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
guys.
you.
Appreciate your time too.
Yeah,
You
for
got
sure.
it. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
There it is, episode 56. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Big thank you to Chris and Gray for having us up to Kamloops. Quick reminder, head over to thewildsheepfoundation.org to become a member. And if you're a BC resident, make sure to become a member of the Wild Sheep Society of BC. Next week on the show, we've got Ben O'Brien. And the week after that, we have Jeff Lander and Aaron Snyder joining us on the show together. For all things related to the Rookie Hunter, head over to therookihunter.com and send us an email. Tag us in your Instagram post. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'll see you next week.